All right, everybody. So we have just been here at the, what's this place called? The Blockchain Center.
Yes, it is.
It's filled with a lot of blocks and some chains.
Which we said looks an awful lot like a 1980s punk bar.
Punk bar, yeah. Honestly, it really does. We're at Take Human Action here. This is a wonderful event. We've had quite a few speakers here. We're going to hear some more, but you got a chance, Mike, to speak about your book here, Constitution Owner's Manual. This is the real Constitution. Now, I thought I know what the Constitution was. The Bill of Rights and the basic Constitution that says what the government can do, but you're saying that there's kind of been a misperception or misconnection about how people approach the Constitution altogether.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest problem is that people don't understand the basic structure that was intended. Now, obviously, it doesn't operate this way.
Yeah.
But the intention was that the federal government would have very few limited powers. They call them enumerated powers. They actually list them in the Constitution.
Sure.
You go to Article 1, Section 8, you'll see a list
Right.
of different things that the Congress can do, for instance.
Yeah.
There's a legal maxim that basically says if you make a list, anything that's not on the list is excluded.
Right.
So when you look at the Constitution, if it's not on the list of delegated powers, if it wasn't delegated to the federal government, it's supposed to be left to the states and the people.
Right.
Which is what the 10th Amendment says.
Right, exactly.
And so that really changes the whole scope of everything, because I think most people are under the impression that basically the federal government can do whatever it wants, and the states and the people were relegated to being serfs or servants to the federal government, and it's basically flipped on its head.
Well,
so my goal is to try to help people understand, no, that's not what this is supposed to do.
Well, I mean, if you talk to the regular constitutional enthusiast, they say the Constitution is a wonderful document. It helps us as Americans, protects our freedoms, but they would also go on to say the government's too big, there's been too much intrusion by our rights. So where does the Constitution actually fit in that argument?
Well, the first thing that I would say is that there's a misconception that, especially with the Bill of Rights, that the Constitution gives us rights.
Yeah.
No, we have rights.
Right.
We always have rights. We have rights by virtue of our existing as human beings. We would say as Christians that they're given to us by God.
Right.
They're God-given rights. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights basically are a restraint on government. Yeah. I really wish they'd call the Bill of Rights the Bill of Prohibitions for government.
Oh, really?
Because what it basically says is that the government cannot infringe on these rights that pre-exist. You have a right to keep and bear arms.
Right.
The federal government can't infringe upon that.
Yeah.
So that's an important misconception that people should have to understand. But the other thing is that, you know, if you're going to have a government, we need to understand that governments are in effect power.
Yeah.
Power needs to be restrained. Power's not going to be restrained by a piece of paper, right? So we have to do something to enforce this Constitution. It's in effect a contract. The people of the states, and the states are the sovereign entity in this
Right.
Union.
Right.
And when I say states, I mean the people of the states, not
People
the
of the states. Okay.
governments, but
Gotcha.
just people.
Yeah.
They got together, they said, we're going to have a union,
Right.
a confederation,
Right.
and we're going to have a general government that's going to do these specific things.
Right.
So in effect, this is a contract between the people of the various states.
Yeah.
You have to enforce the contract. And that's really what my talk was about here today.
Yeah.
I can't have a contract with you unless there's an enforcement mechanism.
Sure.
Otherwise, it's just a parchment barrier, as Madison put it.
Right.
So the whole idea is that we, the people, need to stop the federal government to take action when it oversteps those constitutional bounds. That, I think, is the key thing that people need to understand.
If we had that agreement between you and I, and you violated that agreement, but I did nothing to push after any kind of retribution, then basically it's my fault.
It's your fault, right?
Yeah.
If you're just waving the paper at me and calling me a poo-poo duty head, that's not going to do anything. You would go to court, you would do something. Well, we as people here in the United States, we can do something.
Yeah, right.
We can refuse to cooperate with the federal government when they do unjust things. So that's what we do at the 10th Amendment Center, is we try to find ways to undermine overreaching federal power, which most federal power today is overreaching.
Okay, now I think you just said a really big phrase there that shouldn't go unnoticed. You said undermine. So are you talking about undermining the government with the Constitution?
Yeah.
Now, how is that done?
We have a document that basically
that
creates
allows
the government, and we're going to undermine it with that document.
But I mean, then are you talking about pitchforks and rifles in the streets, or what are you talking about?
I'm talking about, so let's just understand what the federal government does, everything, right?
Okay.
It needs help.
Yep.
It uses the state and the local governments to basically do everything that it does.
Yeah.
State and local governments don't have to help. They don't have to be partners with the federal government when it's doing things that the federal government's not allowed to legally do.
Yeah.
So what I'm suggesting is that instead of just saying, oh, we're going to do whatever the feds say, I'm saying, we say no.
Right.
When you say you're going to come confiscate firearms,
Yeah.
we're not going to cooperate with that. We're not going to use state police or sheriffs or local police to enforce this. And the dirty little secret is the federal government doesn't have the personnel and resources to do it themselves. So that's the beauty of this strategy. It's a blueprint that James Madison himself gave us in Federalist 46, a refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union. So it's kind of simple,
Yeah.
but very profound.
I mean, I can understand that whenever you're coming at it from a standpoint of, what may happen or what might happen, but I mean, has this ever been employed before? I mean, does this actually happen within the states?
Yeah, absolutely. I was joking when I was doing my talk that, when I was sitting in here, I smelled weed.
Yeah.
No matter what you, whatever
We're in
you
New
might-
York City.
right?
So,
Whatever you may think about
Right.
marijuana,
Yeah.
it's definitely an issue for the states.
Yeah.
If you wonder if I'm right about that, just ask yourself why it required a constitutional amendment to have alcohol prohibition.
Right.
There's no difference.
Right.
So the federal government still maintains prohibition. Many states have decided we don't want to prohibit marijuana. Some states have said we're going to let anybody do this because we don't like prohibition. Some states have said we recognize some medical benefits, so we're going to have medical marijuana.
Gotcha.
Federal government says no
Right,
on all of it.
right.
And yet today we have 37 states that have medical marijuana. I've not seen a tank roll in any of those states yet.
Yeah, right.
And it's not being enforced. The feds have given up because, again, no personnel or resources. So you take this weed model
Right, yeah,
and
yeah.
you apply it to guns, and you
Yeah.
apply it to health care, and you apply
Right.
it to sound money and unconstitutional wars. There are ways to use state and local power to refuse to cooperate with all of those things.
Now, is that all then hinging on me being able to talk to my governor and say, hey, Mr. Governor, we shouldn't do what the federal government says, or can we go more local with this?
Absolutely. I mean, there are various ways. You can start with state action, which requires legislative action.
Sure.
There's also individual nullification. We like the term nullification, to make
Yeah.
something void or ineffective.
Right,
You
right.
can do that at an individual level. One of the great places where we can do this is when it comes to sound money. We have a Federal Reserve right now that
Yep.
claims a monopoly on money, right?
Right.
It prints money. Well, there are other ways that you and I could do business.
That's
We
true.
could transact in gold
Right.
or silver, or I could trade my book for your book.
A barter system, yeah.
Barter system.
Yeah.
So these are ways that individually we can undermine that currency monopoly. And
It's a great book. It's a great strategy. I love it. Hey, thanks for being here.
yeah, thanks
Really
for having
appreciate
me.
it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thanks.